Losing fat on autopilot without even thinking about the word calories is possible. In fact, you can do it without even understanding what a calorie deficit is. I'm Dr. Borja Bandera, a medical specialist in endocrinology and nutrition, and in this video, I'm going to teach you how to achieve a calorie deficit in 11 different ways without even having to know what it is. Why so many ways? Because if you only have a hammer, you only see nails. When it comes to fat loss, being flexible in the face of challenges that will definitely come up is key. And to be flexible, you need to know all the possible tools, not just one. On the way to reaching your desired body fat percentage, you're going to face frustration, temptations, good days, bad days, negative comments, moments of high energy, low energy, everything. You're going to face it all. If you use the tools taught here and trust the process, you'll likely improve your health, appearance, and performance without suffering. But first, you need to understand the key concept. It's not about the calorie deficit itself, but about how you reach it and maintain it. Your focus shouldn't be on calories, even though they are important. This might seem contradictory to you, but let me explain. Actually, instead of explaining, let me ask you. Can you be a great triathlete without knowing what VO2 max is? Yes, you can, right? Can you gain muscle without knowing what sarcomeric hypertrophy is? What about sarcoplasmic hypertrophy? You can, right? And that's why you can also lose fat without knowing what a calorie is. Obviously, the best thing is to have both practical and technical knowledge, but it's not even necessary. In fact, for mental health reasons, I like my patients to never focus on calories or weight. If you follow this channel, you should already know that in real life, all diets work and all diets fail, but they also all have something in common. Let's see if you can guess what it is with the following examples. The paleo diet eliminates any processed or ultra-processed foods from your diet, which drastically cuts calories. Vegan and vegetarian diets are based on plant-based foods that naturally have a lower calorie density. Ketogenic and low-carb diets have an appetite-suppressing effect and are very filling because of their high fat and protein content. When you feel fuller, you eat less. Intermittent fasting reduces your total intake during the day by significantly limiting the time window in which you eat, so you eat less. Meal replacement diets, which move billions every year, make you consume a product with less energy than the food you would eat instead, so you eat less. And of course, stupid diets like the cucumber diet or the egg diet make you lose weight because they greatly restrict the variety of foods, and with less variety, you consume less energy. You're starting to get it now, right? All diets work because all of them, in one way or another, make you temporarily enter a calorie deficit. The problem is that all these diets also invariably fail unless they are sustainable for you over time. And for the fat loss journey to be sustainable over time, it's best to develop tools that are independent of any specific diet. Cross-cutting tools that can help you on a vegan, paleo, Mediterranean diet or any other. Tools you can use throughout your life. And that make you anti-fragile in the face of the unexpected. Let's look at 10 of my favorites. First, make smart substitutions. People think that to lose 10 kilos of fat, you have to make superhuman efforts. There are 24-hour fasts and completely unsustainable diets going hungry all day. No, forget about that. Focus on making small changes and repeating them over time. Here are 10 examples of food substitutions that, without you even noticing, will drastically reduce the calorie content of your diet. Start with one, realize that the change wasn't that big of a deal, then repeat with another, and so on. Swap regular pasta for zucchini noodles, protein macaroni, or konjac pasta, which has hardly any calories. Swap rice, or even brown rice, it doesn't matter, for rice in quotes made from cauliflower, which is just grated cauliflower. Swap snacking on olives for vegetable crudités with hummus. Yes, at first when you do it once or twice, you'll say, well, it's not such a big deal, right? Really? Swap cookies when you're hungry for raw peeled carrots, or replace white bread with protein bread, or swap the beer at lunch for sparkling water with lemon. Or swap potato chips for sweet potato chips made with the air fryer. Or simply choose lean cuts of meat and discard the fatty ones when you didn't pay attention to that before. Or use only vinegar, oil, and salt as dressing, or use an oil spray instead of pouring oil freely. Also switch from sugary sodas to zero-calorie sodas or water. Yes, I know that zero-calorie sodas contain sweeteners, which are not the best option in the world, but for people who have the habit of drinking a lot of sugary carbonated drinks, juices, and so on, this is a useful change. We can't deny it. Rely on the thermic effect of food. Few people know that you can voluntarily raise your temperature. What was that about dietary thermogenesis? Easy. The process of digesting, absorbing, and metabolizing food costs your body energy. To get energy from food, you have to invest some energy in it. And this is what we do every time we eat. The key is that you have to invest much more energy in some foods than in others. If you invest 30 euros to earn 100, you haven't earned 100 euros, you've earned 70, right? What we want is to gain as little as possible, unlike with money. How do we do that? Understanding this, fats have an almost negligible thermogenic effect, from 0 to 3% of their total energy. That is, we are very efficient at absorbing fat, and we keep almost 100% of the energy they contain. In addition, they are quite palatable, especially when combined with carbohydrates. Anyone who tells you that you can't gain weight by eating only fat is telling you a joke, if we look at carbohydrates. The thermic effect is higher, and we lose between 8% and 14% of the energy they contain. But this only applies if we're talking about whole unprocessed sources. A refined carbohydrate like white bread has an almost zero thermogenic effect, just like fats. This is another forgotten factor for why a diet high in fiber and unprocessed foods is useful for losing weight and fat, and a diet rich in ultra-processed foods is more energy-dense. And lastly, there's our beloved protein, which has a thermogenic effect that in some cases reaches up to 30%. This means that almost a third of the energy, in the most extreme cases, that you get from that protein source is used to digest, absorb, and metabolize that food. The same applies here. And it's not the same to talk about whey protein, a very useful ultra-processed protein, as it is to talk about a steak. The latter has much more thermogenesis. It's harder to digest than the former. But I also want you to understand that ultra-processed foods have a lower thermic effect than other real foods. So a diet based on them is a very energy-efficient diet. And it will make you gain more fat. Added to all the other harmful effects that we already know about, in conclusion, the food groups that have the greatest thermogenic effect are protein sources and unprocessed carbohydrates. Prioritize these in your diet to continue progressing. 3. Adjust your macros based on your body fat percentage. Although you can lose fat with almost any combination of macronutrients, the truth is that we can fine-tune things a bit more. Limiting or moderating carbohydrates is very useful for people with a high body fat percentage and generally poor adherence to diets. We could place this category at more than 25% body fat in men and more than 35% in women. In these cases, the loss of water and glycogen associated with the initial carbohydrate restriction creates a kind of sense of achievement and progress that leads to adherence. If we also maintain a high protein intake, satiety levels will remain stable throughout the day, preventing cravings and unnecessary snacking. This is a big part of the magic of low-carb diets and the reason why they have so many followers. In my experience, the profile that benefits the most from these diets are middle-aged people with low to medium physical activity levels, high body fat percentage, and a history of multiple previous diet failures. 4. Develop the ability to observe yourself neutrally. Losing fat and especially maintaining an appropriate body fat percentage over time requires significant analytical effort. You need to get out of your own head and carefully observe your daily behavior. Analyze which foods drive you crazy when you tend to be hungrier, what times are you more likely to snack, how many times on average do you eat out, whether you eat more or less when you drink alcohol, whether you eat more or less when you're alone or with others, how many alcoholic drinks you usually have per week, and if you're really including enough fruits and vegetables. There are 1,000 more examples. Why? It's so easy to get carried away by the hundreds of unconscious nutritional decisions we make throughout the day. You simply don't notice most of them. They go unnoticed. We all have a lot of blind spots in our routine. Other people's opinions are usually not definitive. Many will tell you what you want to hear. Others will be excessively harsh with you. But the truth is that most of us are lenient with ourselves, and a large part of our behaviors are unconscious. Being honest with yourself and developing this analytical ability is key. Being as objective as possible and putting aside unnecessary justifications that save us from feeling bad. Of course, it's very important not to fall into self-punishment or excessive judgment. That's also part of it. Treat yourself with a lot of love, care, and kindness, but develop a rational attitude toward your behavior. 5. Avoid trigger foods. There are what I call trigger foods. which are those that, when you taste them, lower your self-control mechanisms and increase the likelihood that you'll overeat them. And in addition, they can make you eat other satellite foods. In the worst cases, they're even products rather than foods, which can trigger a binge or a pseudo-binge. Some classic trigger foods are sweet or salty cookies, white bread, this one is very common, refined bakery sweets, different types of cheese, bagged potato chips, salty snacks, sugary sodas and energy drinks, chocolate and ice cream. And for some people, many actually, alcohol. The farther away you keep these products from where you spend most of your time, whether it's at home or at work, the better. What's your trigger food? Let us know. Be more restless. Are you someone who's physically calm or nervous? This might seem silly, but it's not. Fidgeting is the unconscious muscle movements we make with our skeletal muscles throughout the day. You don't notice them, but when you scratch your head or your nose, you're using energy. And the differences between people who fidget a little and those who fidget a lot are huge. In some studies, there's a difference of more than 800 kilocalories a day. That's a lot. 7. Go to bed 30 minutes earlier. Sleep is necessary to lose fat. Many of us, because of daily demands, sleep less than our bodies need. This causes your metabolism to change, and hormones that should help you lose fat in the long run actually do the opposite and make it harder. Sleeping too little increases insulin resistance, worsens blood sugar control, increases your appetite for sweets, and decreases your energy expenditure and physical activity. Also, not sleeping is a tricky habit, because someone who sleeps 2 hours less than they need and creates a calorie deficit still loses weight. Actually, if you only focus on your weight, you'll keep losing it. The problem is that most of the weight lost is lean mass, not fat mass. So if not being able to sleep makes you desperate, do what you can, make it a priority to solve that. But I'm going to recommend just one thing to you. Do this and let me know how it goes. Get up a little earlier, go outside to do some physical exercise, aerobic, not at very high intensities. Zone 2 is ideal. A natural environment is also ideal. A park, a beach, a mountain, a trail, it doesn't matter to me. Keep that habit for a week, 30 minutes if you can in the sun, if you can in a natural environment, and if you can zone 2 1 week. Let me know how your sleep changes. To achieve deep and restorative sleep at night, during the day you need to be very awake. You need to generate what's called sleep inertia. And for this, aerobic exercise in the early hours of the day is the best thing you can do. Change your tableware. Modifying the size of your tableware can influence the amount of food you eat and therefore fat loss. This is interesting, very curious. According to clinical studies, using smaller plates can reduce the calories you consume throughout the day. Likewise, there is evidence suggesting that the color contrast between the tableware and the food can also affect the perception of portions and the amount consumed. A study conducted by this group showed that when the color of the plate contrasted with the color of the food, look how curious this is, the participants served themselves significantly smaller portions compared to when the color of the plate and the food were similar. That is white rice on a white plate? No. Blue plate and white rice? Yes. 9. Take care of your short-chain fatty acids. Increasing the intake of fermentable carbohydrates has been linked to a decrease in body fat percentage. One of the proposed mechanisms is the production of short-chain fatty acids like butyrate or acetate, which are part of your beloved microbiota. The acetate produced in the colon crosses the blood-brain barrier, reaches the brain, and suppresses your appetite by modulating different hypothalamic areas. To increase butyrate production, you can increase your intake of fermentable fiber, prebiotic fiber, inulin, pectin, and fructooligosaccharides. These are good examples. And in the end, it's also interesting to include probiotic fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, or kimchi. 10. Is N-acetylcysteine useful for fat loss? What the heck does N-acetylcysteine have to do with fat loss? Well, directly, not much. However, there is evidence linking the use of N-acetylcysteine with lower impulsivity. Its use has even been studied in psychiatric conditions where impulsivity is a key element, like obsessive-compulsive disorder, with good results. For a supplement, I mean. At appropriate doses, its toxicity is practically non-existent, so it is worth considering an exploratory study. I encourage conducting a study of this modified amino acid as a method to improve our self-control over food. In fact, we do have recent evidence stating that N-acetylcysteine reduces addictive behaviors related to food. However, this was in obese mice and at high doses, 11. Chew more? Eating slowly and chewing each bite more times can reduce energy intake by up to 10% per day. That's a lot. It's a lot over the course of months and years, not just one day. When you eat more slowly, your brain interprets satiety signals better, and your gut produces more incretins, like glucagon-like peptide, 1 and gastric inhibitory polypeptide. Chewing increases your satiety throughout the entire day. A higher number of chewing cycles per bite increases insulin release, optimizes glucose management, and even reduces glycated hemoglobin. Yes, restoring chewing function in people who didn't have it properly improves glycated hemoglobin levels very, very significantly. So develop the habit of making every meal a full meditation. Pay attention to every bite. Be grateful for it. Savor it. Eat with presence. Take a break between each bite. You can also put your fork or spoon down on the table between bites. That will force you to eat more mindfully, more slowly. And that's it for today's video. If you need some extra help for us to be with you in your process, helping you step by step, leave your information here. And we will contact you for both consultations and for nutritional or training advice. A big hug. Thank you for subscribing. See you in the next video, and let's keep empowering.